Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to crochet Cleo the cat. With a perfect blend of a playful poise, sassy charm, and a refined taste, this adorable cat is ready to leap into your life and unfurl a world of whimsy and warmth. This pattern, like all of the Kindness Company patterns, is a quick crochet, making it perfect for spreading crochet kindness. Cleo the cat can be made in sport, DK, or bulky weight yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today, I'll be crocheting in worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to pick up the matching magical crochet greeting card to make an adorable gift that your friends and family will absolutely love. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started on Cleo the cat's pattern, and we're going to begin with this sort of honey brown color, and we need to form a magic ring. So let's review how to tie a magic ring. Okay, so let's review how to tie a magic loop. So to start, we're going to get about 5 inches of our tail of our working yarn, and then we need to form a bit of a finger guns here with our left hand. And then we're going to lay that tail so that the tail part of it is down over the bottom digit of our left hand. And then we're going to take our thumb and pinch that tail so it's on securely to our index and our middle finger. Then we're going to take the working yarn, and that's the yarn that's attached to the ball of yarn, and we're going to wrap it around the back side of those 2 fingers really close to the top digit. So I'm just wrapping around the back, and then I'm going to continue by pulling it behind my thumb. So I just made a big loop around my fingers. Then we're going to wrap a second time, but this time we're going to go around the lower digit on the back side of our left hand. And then one last time we're going to push that working yarn behind our thumb on our left hand. Then when we've done that, we can take our crochet hook and we're going to flip our left hand over so we can see those 2 loops that we formed. And then taking our crochet hook underneath that top loop, we're going to use the hook to grab that bottom loop and pull it underneath the top loop. Then when we've done that, we're going to flip our hands back over away from our body and then bring our hook and our left hand together. So you can see my fingers on my right hand are touching the back side of the hand with the loops on it. Then I'm going to take my right index finger and thumb and I'm going to grab those loops that are on the back side of my hand. So the one on the hook and the one on my hand. Once I've got those pinched rather securely, I'm going to let go with my thumb and then slide all of those loops very carefully off of my hand. Once I've done that, you can see I have my tail. Again, that's not attached to the ball of yarn. And then my working yarn. I'm going to move my tail out of my way, kind of just swing it around clockwise to the 12 o'clock position. And then I'm going to grab my working yarn and begin tensioning it by laying it over my left index finger and then grabbing the remaining yarn with my pinky and my ring finger. Then we need to be able to tension our yarn, so we're going to have to let go with our right hand. But before we do, we need to make sure we're pinching the loop that we've tied and our tail together. So if you look, I like to kind of pinch so that it sandwiches that working yarn. So I'm just going to pinch both that loop and that tail together here. And then when I've done that, I can let go with my right hand, and pulling my index finger up lets me tighten that loop on my hook. Then to lock our magic loop or magic ring in place, we can yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. And that locks everything in place. You can let go with your left hand. You can even stop tensioning if you want. This loop isn't going to go anywhere now that we've locked it in place. One last thing that I like to do before I get started is I'll take the tail. You can see it's sort of threaded through the loop that we've made. I like to take this tail and pull it out so that I can go ahead and get started placing single crochet inside. Before you begin, we also need to make sure we are working both in the loop and over the tail of the magic ring as well. All right, so we are ready to make our first single crochet stitch. Alright, so now that we have formed our magic ring, we're ready to start in on round 1. And if you look up at the top left-hand corner, you'll see the instructions to the pattern are going to kind of track with us here on this video. So you can, of course, reference the written pattern, but I have it here in the top left corner for our convenience. Alright, so for round 1, we need to place 6 SC in MR, which when I translate that means 6 single crochet stitches inside of our magic ring. So remember, when we're working in our magic ring, we're going to be working in the ring itself, and then also over that tail that we use to form it, because we're going to pull that tail to cinch all of those stitches into a round. So let's start by making that first single crochet stitch. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to go underneath the side of the ring and that tail. So I'm going to go through that ring and put those 2 strands over my hook. Then I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to yarn under, meaning I'm going to put the yarn under my hook and then use that hook part to grab that yarn and pull it up and a little tall inside of that ring, which gives me 2 loops on my hook. Then to finish single crocheting, I'm going to take my yarn and yarn over, meaning I'm going to put the yarn over my hook. Then I'm going to pull with the hook part that yarn through those 2 remaining loops left on my hook. I also like to tighten this first stitch by grabbing it and tugging it towards the hook. So just kind of bringing it over to the hand that's holding my hook. And then I'm also going to mark this first stitch. So if you kind of turn your work on the side, you'll see this little V shape. We're going to take a stitch marker and we're going to go through both sides, both legs of that V to mark it. Alright, so now we've got our first single crochet stitch made and marked. We need to add 5 more in the same way to this ring. So we're going to continue working, going through the ring, yarning under and pulling up a nice tall loop, and then yarning over and pulling through all the loops left on our hook, and then pulling that stitch over towards our hook hand just to kind of tighten it a little bit. And we're going to continue making our single crochet stitches the same way until we have all 6 of the stitches that we need for this round. Alright, I have all 6 of my single crochet stitches formed, and I can double check that by turning my work to the side and counting all of these little V stitches, excluding the loop on our hook because that doesn't count as a stitch. So I have 6 single crochet stitches, which means I'm ready to go ahead and do the magic part of our magic ring. By pulling that tail, I can close that round off and form a circle, which is what we want. Alright, so we're ready for the next round, which is round 2, where we need to learn a new kind of stitch called an INC. So an INC stands for an increase, and in single crochet that means putting 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch from the previous round. So we need to place an increase in this stitch here, the one that's marked. So we're going to go ahead and take that stitch marker out. And just like we slipped the stitch marker through both of those loops, both sides of that V on that stitch, we need to do the same thing with our crochet hook. So we're going to slip it underneath from front to back, both sides of that stitch. So this looks like 2 loops are now on our hook. This is really just the fabric of our work on our hook, and it kind of only counts as 1 because it's the fabric. Then we're going to make that single crochet stitch exactly like we did when we were working the magic ring. We're going to yarn under and draw through the fabric of our work a nice tall loop, and then yarn over and draw through the 2 loops left on our hook. Then we also need to mark this stitch because it's the first stitch of our round. We're always going to mark that first stitch. And then to finish our increase, we need to place another single crochet stitch in the same stitch from the previous round. So if you look, you can see there's a little hole here where that first stitch is coming out of. We need to go through that same space. So just push your hook through, yarn under, and draw up a nice tall loop, and then yarn over and draw through both. Then we're going to continue working in the stitches of this round. You can see our next stitch is that next V shape. We're going to place another increase in all of these stitches around. So we're going to go to our next stitch, push through both sides of that little V, yarn under and draw up a nice tall loop, then yarn over and draw through both. And then we're going to do that same thing in the same stitch. So that same hole that's got our stitch coming out of it, we're going to go through that one again, and yarn under and draw up a loop, and yarn over and draw through two. And we're going to continue adding 2 single crochet stitches, or increasing, in the remaining stitches of the round. And if you look at the very end of our instructions up here in the top left, you'll see the number in parentheses has the number 12. That's our stitch count. It's telling us how many stitches we need to end up with at the end of our round. So we're increasing, putting 2 stitches in each of the 6 stitches from round 1. So mathematically that adds up to doubling the amount of stitches from round 1, which means 12 stitches total for round 2. So let's keep increasing. Alright, I have all 12 stitches from round 2 formed, but before I move on to round 3, I'm going to give my magic ringtail one final tug, and then trim it short, but not completely off. So maybe leave a 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and you can discard this tail. I find that helps keep it out of my way as I work the next couple of rounds. Alright, so for round 3, we've got a new thing we need to learn how to do, which are these parentheses that you can see up here in the top left. So let me translate what that means. So the parentheses have some instructions inside of them. Those need to be repeated in the order that they appear, and then outside of the parentheses you'll see a multiplication sign and a number. That's telling you how many times you need to repeat the instructions inside. So in this situation we need to repeat the parentheses 6 times, and that will take you all the way around your round. And in this situation will give you 18 stitches, which is that last number in parentheses. So let's dive right in and practice this new skill. We're going to start by making that first instruction, which is to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch. So I went ahead and took my stitch marker out. We're going to go through that next stitch and make 1 single crochet stitch, and then remark that stitch. And then the next instruction in the parentheses is to increase in the next stitch. So we're going to go to the next one over, and we're going to place an increase, which we just learned how to do, which is 2 single crochet stitches in the same stitch. And that wraps up 1 repetition of those parentheses and 1 time of them, meaning we need to do this same pattern 5 more times until we are all the way around round 3. So that's 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, and then an increase in the stitch after. And that makes 2 repetitions, so we're going to keep repeating that until we get to the end of our round. Alright, so that's round 3 done for me, and we're ready for round 4, where we're going to begin by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round. And don't forget, we're going to mark that stitch as well. And then we're going to increase in the next stitch. And then we've got our next set of parentheses that we need to repeat. So it may be a little confusing when you see 2 single crochet as that first instruction, Because that sounds a lot like an increase, 2 single crochet stitches, right? In the same place? Well, we would write increase if we meant to put 2 in the same place. So when you see the number 2 and then single crochet, that means to put 1 in the next 2 stitches. So 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch, and then 1 single crochet stitch in the stitch after. And then an increase and that's 1 repetition of that instruction. If you look outside the parentheses, we need to do that for a total of 5 times. So we need to repeat that 4 more times, and that will take us to the last stitch of the round, where if you look, the only thing we need to do to finish the round is place 1 single crochet in that last stitch. So let's continue repeating that parentheses pattern. 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, increase, Alright, so you can see I am almost all the way done with this round. I just have that 1 stitch left, and all I need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in that stitch. Alright, that wraps up round 4. Round 5, we've got another set of parentheses to repeat, so we need to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. And then an increase in the next stitch. And that's 1 repetition of that parentheses pattern. We need to do that 5 more times for a total of 6, which will finish this round. Alright, so that wraps up round 5. We're ready for round 6, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. So 1 single crochet stitch, 1 single crochet stitch, and then an increase. And then we've got our next set of parentheses, which is to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. And then an increase in the next stitch. And then repeat that sequence another 4 times for a total of 5 repetitions, which will take us to the last 2 stitches of the round. Alright, so that was my last repetition of those parentheses. I've got 2 stitches left in the round, and all we need to do is put 1 single crochet in each. Okay, so that wraps up round 6. So we're ready for rounds 7 through 12. And all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 36 stitches of the round. So remember as you work to continue marking the first stitch, and I will see you back here whenever I finish that 12th round of single crochet. Alright, so I have just wrapped up round 12, and you can see my piece has gotten considerably longer since we last talked. But before I move on to round 13, I want to point out a few things. So I'm going to take my hook out. You don't need to. I'm just going to do this so it's a little easier to show you. Your piece may have worked inside out as you started adding rounds. So if yours sort of looks like this, you can see these stitches here on the outside of this bowl shape have sort of these little lines that run through them. And then your magic ring tail is kind of chilling on the outside. It looks a little bit like the stem of like a watermelon or something. If yours is hanging out on the outside of your piece, we actually need to flip this so that this is on the inside and then the right side is facing out. You can tell the right side because the stitches have this neat X shape, and that magic ring tail is on the inside. So as you continue working, you just want to encourage your piece to have this sort of shape with the X-shaped stitches on the outside. Alright, so let's continue on with our pattern. We're moving on to round 13, where we've got another parentheses repetition that we need to make. So we'll start by taking our marker out and putting one single crochet stitch in the next 5 stitches of the round. And then we'll increase after we've got those first 5 single crochet stitches. And then we're going to repeat that pattern another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions all the way around. Alright, so that's round 13 done. For round 14, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in the 42 stitches of round 13. So that's just one single crochet in every stitch. Alright, so that's round 14 done for me. For round 15, we're going to begin by putting one single crochet stitch in the next 8 stitches. Alright, so now that I've got my first 8 single crochet stitches, we need to put 6 increases back to back. So one increase in the next 6 stitches. Alright, so those are my 6 increases all done. Then we need to put one single crochet stitch in the next 14 stitches. Alright, so there are my 14 single crochet stitches. Then we're going to put another 6 increases back to back, so one in the next 6 stitches. Alright, there are my 6 increases, and then to wrap up this round, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the remaining 8 stitches of the round. Alright, so that is round 15 done. So for round 16 through 21, all we're going to do is put one single crochet stitch in the 54 stitches of the round, all the way around. But before we start, I wanted to point something out. If you look, you'll see the increases that we added on either side of our piece sort of make it flare out in an oval shape, which is good. We want that. We want that for the final shape of Cleo's body. But I wanted to bring attention to it now because I wanted to show that the face is going to be centered between these two flares. And it's really obvious right now, but as we add more rounds, it becomes less obvious. So kind of get used to the idea of the face being centered between those two rows, those two 6 increase sections of the body. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here on rounds 16 through 21. I will catch you back here whenever I have wrapped up round 21. Alright, so I just wrapped up that last round of single crochet from round 21, and you can see my piece has gotten quite a bit bigger here. So we're ready to start decreasing, so we're going to begin by learning a new stitch here for round 22. First, let's start with we know by placing 1 single crochet stitch in the next 7 stitches of the round. Alright, so there are those 7 single crochet stitches, so we're ready to learn how to DEC, or decrease. So with an increase we put 2 stitches in the same stitch. With a decrease we're going to take 2 stitches and make them so they form 1 stitch for this round. So to make a decrease, we're going to go through our next stitch just as we normally would, yarn under and draw up a loop. Then we're going to do that exact same thing in the stitch right after. So go through, yarn under, and draw up a loop. So now we've got 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over and draw through all 3 of those loops to form our decrease. So you can see it makes it so that these 2 stitches from the previous round come together into just one V, which decreases the amount of stitches we have for this round. Alright, so that's 1 repetition of those inside those parentheses. Let's do that another 5 times for a total of 6 all the way around. Alright, so that was my last stitch for round 22. For round 23, all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 48 stitches of the round. So that's just 1 single crochet all the way around. Alright, so that's round 23. We're ready for round 24, where we're going to begin by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those first 4 single crochet, then we're going to decrease. And then repeat that sequence another 7 times for a total of 8 repetitions all the way around. Alright, that's round 24 done. I'm ready for round 25, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. Now that I've got those first 3 single crochet made, I'm going to decrease, and then repeat that sequence another 7 times for a total of 8 repetitions all the way around. Alright, that's round 25 done. For round 26, we're going to begin by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then decreasing, and then repeating that pattern another 7 times for a total of 8 all the way around. Alright, that's round 26 done. We're ready for round 27, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round. and then decrease, and then repeat that pattern another 7 times for a total of 8 all the way around. Alright, so that's round 27 done, and before I make my last round, which is round 28, I'm going to add the safety eyes and then embroider some of the details on Cleo's face. So let's go ahead and take this last loop on our hook and pull it very long so we can add all of these features without this coming undone. And then we're going to take Cleo's body and we're going to flip it over so this active stitch is in the back. And then remember, whenever we started whenever we went around and just added rows of single crochet, I pointed out those 2 spaces where the 6 single crochet increases were. We're going to be centering the eyes between those. So sort of like a gourd shape a little bit here. So for me, that's basically straight across from where my stitch marker is here in the back. And we're going to be putting the eyes on this side. So let's go ahead and grab our safety eyes. Alright, so I have my safety eyes here. I'm going to be using these shiny black ones. A quick note, if you're going to be giving Cleo to a pet or a young child, you may consider embroidering the eyes instead of the safety eyes. Alright, so let's go ahead and get these eyes placed. Remember, we're going to be centered between those 6 single crochet increases that we made. And our eyes are going to be between rounds 13 and 14. So I like to take the eyes stem and starting here at that first round, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And between rounds 13 and 14, so the space between them, I'm going to just stick my eye in that spot to start with. And take my second eye, and I'm going to place the second eye where it needs to be centered between these 2 stitches. So I'm going to 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 stitches over from that eye. Place that first safety eye. And then our eyes are supposed to be 6 stitches apart. So let me take that first eye out and count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then place that second eye. So there are the eyes placed. A quick note though, if you'd like, you can adjust where the eyes are placed. You can scoot them up or down or closer together or further apart. I'm going to move my eyes up by 1 row. And I'm going to scoot this eye over 1 stitch. That's just my own personal preference. I like them to be just a little bit closer together. Alright, so once your eyes are placed and you've double checked that they're sort of centered between these 2 6 single crochet increase sides, we can snap the backs on the inside of our piece by just pushing them onto the stem until they click. And then once they're attached, we're ready to stuff our piece. So when you're stuffing, be really careful not to accidentally stuff your working yarn or active stitch on the inside. I do this often and I have to fish it out, and it's very annoying when it happens. Alright, so that's the body stuffed. So let's go ahead and get the nose and the whiskers embroidered on as well. So we're going to take a little length of this darker brown color, and we're going to use this for the tip of the tail later on too. And let's get this prepped to sew with by threading it through the eye of our yarn needle. And then we're going to tie a knot here on the end. I like to tie my knots by holding the end of the yarn against my yarn needle like this, and then wrapping that end around maybe 5 times total. And then by holding tightly on those wraps, I'm going to push them down over the eye of the needle and then just keep pulling them until they're at the very end of my length of yarn. Then I'm going to cut the excess tail here on the other side of the knot. And then we're ready to sew the nose between the two eyes here. So I'm going to go up through the bottom of the body that we haven't finished off yet. And I'm going to go centered between the eyes, maybe 2 rows below where they are. And so 1 long stitch directly up and centered between the eyes. And then I'm going to come out maybe 1 stitch over to the left of that 1 long stitch that we sewed. Then I'm going to sew back down towards the stitch that we came up through. I'm going to go through that same stitch actually. And then I'm going to sew up to the corner of the other eye. You can see I'm forming a triangle shape here. I'm going to sew back down through that same stitch and then come up in between these 2 stitches that I've already sewn. So I just go back and forth between the stitches that I've already sewn and continue filling them in until it's a nice filled in darker brown triangle. This should be my last stitch here. And then I like to fill in the top of the triangle where all the stitches kind of come together by sewing a long stitch along the top of it to sort of hide where all of those stitches go into the work of the body. So we just send 1 long straight stitch across. And then I'm going to come back up through the bottom part of the nose so we can add the mouth. Alright, so that's the nose embroidered. Then let's add 1 long straight stitch, maybe 2 rows below, to be the mouth underneath the nose here. And I'm going to send this back into the fluff of the bottom of the body. So you can see that makes the nose and the mouth. So then let's fasten this yarn off so we can add the whiskers. And the way I like to do this is I'm going to tie a working knot, or a surface knot here. So I'm going to loop that brown over the fluff on the inside of the body, and then sew into some of that fluff and up through that loop that I just made. And then by holding that loop close to the fluff and pulling, it ties a knot. And then I can unthread my needle, and then I'm just going to stuff this extra brown inside the body. It'll hide out in there. Alright, there's the nose and mouth added. Let's go ahead and embroider the whiskers next. So we're going to prep some more of that dark brown yarn, just like we did whenever we started with the nose and the mouth. Alright, so now that I've got that prepped, I'm going to sew back up in through the fluff. And I'm going to sew up so that I'm outside of the right eye. So my needle's just going to come straight up through here, right next to where the right eye is. And we're going to sew that first whisker maybe 3 stitches in length, straight in the space between those rows there. And then I'm going to come up 1 row underneath where I came up before. There's our first whisker. And that second whisker is at an angle, so it's maybe down by 1 full row. And then I'm just going to sew straight down about even where the outside of this whisker is. And then we're going to repeat this shape on the other side. So we'll come up on the other side of the body next to the eye. Alright, so when you're ready to sew your second whisker, we're going to do the same thing we did with the nose. We're going to send that needle back down into the fluff and finish sewing that second whisker. And then we're going to fasten off the same way by looping our yarn inside of the fluff of the body, grabbing some of that fluff with our needle and sewing up through that wrap, and then pulling to tie a knot, unthreading our needle, and then just stuffing that brown yarn inside of the body where it's going to hide. Alright, so there's the face added and the whiskers added as well. So let's go ahead and finish up Cleo's body with our last round, which is 28 here. So we're going to take our hook and reinsert it into that big loop that we redrew long, and then pull our working yarn to pull that loop back down onto our hook. And then for round 28, we're just going to decrease in every stitch. So that's 8 decreases all the way around. Alright, so that's my last decrease. I'm ready to fasten off. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out. And we're going to start fastening off by slip stitching to the stitch that marker was just in. So to make a slip stitch, we're going to go through that stitch that the marker was in, yarn under and draw up a loop. And then we're just going to keep drawing that loop we've made through our last loop on our hook. Then we'll cut a medium length tail, 6 inches or so. We don't need too terribly much. And then pull that loop on our hook long until we've pulled it all the way through. And then tighten that loop down by pulling again to tie a little bit of a knot. Then I'm going to put just a little bit more stuffing into the bottom of the body, maybe just a pinch. That'll also help hide those brown strands from the face. Alright, and then we're going to close up those last stitches by taking that tail that we've cut and threading it through our embroidery needle or our yarn needle. And then we're going to sew through the front loops only of all of these stitches from the last round. So when we've been crocheting, we've been going through both of these loops. They form that little V of the stitch. When we close up, we only want to grab the front loop. That's the one that's closest to the front of our piece. So we're going to take our embroidery needle or our yarn needle and sew just through, like kind of in the center of that V. And I'm going to go from kind of bottom to top here and pull that yarn all the way through. And then we're going to keep sewing through just that front loop on each of the stitches left from round 28. Alright, so once you've sewn through all 8 of those stitches, we can pull that yarn and it will close that last round. Then to secure that last round and weave this tail in, we're going to tie another surface knot. So again, we're going to loop that yarn over the surface of our work, grab a little bit of the fabric of the work itself, and then sew up through that loop that we've made. And then just keep sewing, holding that loop close until it ties a knot. Then to weave in this extra tail, we're going to sew down into the body itself and then up through just any old place that you like. It doesn't necessarily matter where. And then pull tight, and that will send our knot to the inside. Then we can unthread our tapestry needle, and by pulling that tail we just wove in, give it a trim, and that weaves it in. Alright, so that is Cleo's body done. Alright, so next up, let's make Cleo's ears, and we need to make 2 of them. So we're going to begin again with that same honey brown color that we used on the body. And like the body, start with a magic ring. Alright, now that I have my magic ring formed, we're going to put 4 single crochet stitches inside. And don't forget, we want to mark that first single crochet stitch. When you have your first 4 single crochet stitches, we're going to pull that magic ring tail. And for round 2, we're going to put 1 increase in each stitch all the way around. there's my first single crochet. I'm going to mark it. Then to continue by increasing, so putting a second single crochet stitch in that first stitch of the round, and then keep increasing. Alright, that wraps up round 2. I'm going to give my magic ring tail one final tug, and then trim it kind of close to the fabric of the ear. Then we're ready for round 3. So for round 3, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then increase in the next stitch. Then we're going to repeat that sequence another 3 more times for a total of 4. Alright, that wraps up round 3. So then for rounds 4 and 5, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so I've just wrapped up round 5 on the ears. I'm going to go ahead and fasten off by taking my stitch marker out. Then we're going to slip stitch to the stitch that I was just in. So again, to slip stitch, go through your next stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, and then draw that loop through the only loop left on your hook. Then we need to cut a little bit of a tail to sew with, so maybe 6 inches or so. And then pull that last stitch all the way through and tighten down. And that wraps up one of the ears, so let's make one more and then get them attached to the body. Alright, I have both of Cleo's ears complete, so I am ready to get them attached to her body. So I'm going to start by flattening the ear and making sure that tail I trimmed is on the far corner. Left or right, it doesn't matter which. Once I've done that, I'm going to thread my yarn needle with the tail left over that we cut. And then we are ready to attach. So I'm going to grab Cleo's body. And the ears are going to go along the top and sewn flat to the very top of the head. So once you've got it positioned, we're going to just take our needle and grab a little of the fabric of the body, and then grab both layers of the ear. And we're just going to keep whip stitching this ear on. Alright, so I have the ear attached and I'm ready to fasten off. So to do that, I'm going to tie another surface knot. And then I'm going to weave the tail in by sewing it down into the body. And then unthreading my tapestry needle, I can cut that tail. And that attaches the ear. So let's repeat that with the other ear on the other side. Alright, next up we need to make the arms. So again, working with that same honey color, we're going to form a magic ring. And then we're ready for round 1, where we're going to put 5 single crochet stitches inside of that magic ring. And then don't forget, want to mark that first stitch. Alright, I've got my first 5 single crochet. I'm going to pull the tail to close off round 1. And we're ready for round 2, where we're going to put an increase in each stitch. Alright, that's the end of round 2 for me, so just like before, let's give that magic ring a final pull, and then trim it close but not all the way off and discard any extra. And then the last round of our arm, all we need to do is put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, that wraps up round 3 for me, so we're ready to fasten off. We'll take our stitch marker out, and we're going to slip stitch to the place that it was just in. And then we can cut a tail and pull that last stitch all the way through and tighten down. And that wraps up one of the arms, so let's make one more and then get them attached. Alright, so I have both of the arms made, so I'm ready to get them attached. Just like with the ear, we're going to fold the arm flat and then make sure that our working yarn, or our tail, is as far to the corner on the right or the left as we can get it. And then thread that tail through our yarn needle. Then once we've got that threaded, we're ready to attach it to Cleo's body. And it's going to go along the side, kind of even with the ears, and then I like mine to be right next to the whiskers. So once you've got it positioned, we're going to attach it the exact same way we attached the ear, by sewing through a little of the body, and then coming through both layers of the fabric on the arm. And then just keep working back and forth until it's fully attached. Alright, so once the arm is fully attached, we're ready to go ahead and fasten off. And we're going to do the same thing we did with the ear. Tie a surface knot. And then weave that tail into the body. Unthread the tapestry needle and trim the tail. And that is one arm attached. Let's go ahead and repeat that same process on the other side. Alright, next we're going to make the legs. So again, with that same honey brown color, we'll form a magic ring. And then inside of that magic ring, we're going to place 6 single crochet stitches, marking that first one. Once you've got your first 6 single crochet, again, pull that tail of the magic ring to close. Then for round 2, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, before we move on to round 3, give your magic ring one final pull, and then trim it close. Then for round 3, we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then increasing in the next stitch of the round. Then we're going to repeat that sequence 2 more times. So 1 single crochet, increase, and then 1 more single crochet, and then increase. And then for rounds 4 through 7, we're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So I will catch you back here whenever I have finished the end of round 7. Alright, I just wrapped up the end of round 7 and I'm ready to fasten off. So I'm going to go ahead and take my stitch marker out I'm going to slip stitch to the stitch that it was just in. And then we need another long tail for sewing, 6 inches or so. Then pull that last stitch all the way through and tighten. And just like the arms and the ears, we're going to need one more of these, and then we can get it attached to the body. Alright, I have both of Cleo's legs done, so I'm ready to attach. Just like with the ear and the arm, we're going to make sure that our leg is folded flat, and that the yarn we're going to be using to sew with is as far to the right or the left as we can, because we're going to be sewing through both layers of fabric. Then let's go ahead and get that threaded through the eye of our tapestry needle. And we're ready to attach. So the legs are going to attach to the bottom of the body, and we're going to start by sewing through both layers to attach it to the side, and then we're going to tack the front of it down so that it stays flush with the front of Cleo's body. So we're going to start by, of course, grabbing some of the fabric of the body and then sewing up through both layers of the fabric of the leg. And we're going to keep whip stitching just like we did with the ear and the arm, sewing through both layers. Then when we have that last stitch done and the leg is attached to the side of the body, we're going to sew down into the body itself and then come up through the stitch where that foot touches the body. Then we've got that stitch sewn. We're going to grab some of the fabric on the one side of the leg. So we're not sewing through both layers. We're going to grab just one side and kind of sew through the leg. And then we're going to come back down into the body and then out through, I come up back behind the back of the leg. And if you look, that stitch is going to hold Cleo's leg close to the bottom of her body. Then we've got the foot tacked down. We can tie another surface knot. And then weave that tail in. Unthread our tapestry needle and then trim that tail. And that attaches her foot to the bottom of the body. Let's repeat on the other foot. Alright, so for the tail, we're going to start with that darker brown color. This is the same brown that I used to embroider on Cleo's nose and whiskers. And we're going to take that yarn and we're going to form a magic ring, just like we have with all of the beginnings of everything so far. Then, once you've got your magic ring formed, we're going to go ahead and put 6 single crochet stitches inside. Once you've got all 6 single crochet, go ahead and pull that magic ring tail. And we're ready for round 2, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so I'm about to make my last single crochet stitch of this round, which is round 2, but we have a color change coming up. So I'm going to only make the first half of the single crochet because we need to finish the stitch in our new color. So I'll start by going through my last stitch of round 2, yarning under and drawing up a loop, and then I'm going to cut my dark brown yarn, leaving a maybe 3 or 4 inch tail. And then grab my honey brown that I've been using for all of the other parts of Cleo's body. And I'm going to make it so that the honey brown tail is the same length as the dark brown tail. And be really careful, your magic ring tail is still attached. Let's actually give that a trim first so we don't confuse it. So just like everything else, trim it kind of close. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's take our honey brown tail and we're going to make it the same length as that darker brown. And I like to pinch that honey brown color in my left hand against my hook. And then I'm going to take it in my right hand, wrap it once around my hook, and then pull so that new color goes through and finishes off that single crochet stitch that we started in dark brown. Then we can begin tensioning that honey brown in our left hand, and we can tighten down that dark brown by pulling the dark brown tail, and then tighten the stitch itself by pulling that light brown tail. And then for the next couple of stitches, we need to work these tails in. So if you look for rounds 3 through 14, all we need to do is put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So I'm going to take my marker out, and I'm going to begin single crocheting, but I'm also going to crochet over those tails. Sort of like how we do with our magic ring, how it has both the ring and the tail. So I'm going to go through the next stitch, but then I'm also going to lay those tails over my hook, and then make my single crochet just like I would normally. We're also going to want to mark the stitch here too, as it is the first of the round, even though it's pretty obvious since it's the new color. And then let's work those tails in one more stitch before we trim them. So we're going to go through the next stitch of the round, then lay those tails over the surface of our hook, and then make our single crochet stitch as normal. Now that we've got those two tails worked in for 2 stitches, we're going to go ahead and give them a trim. So we're not going to cut them all the way off, just trim them shorter so they stay out of our way. You can discard anything you don't use. And then we're going to continue adding single crochet stitches to every stitch for rounds 3 through 14. So I will see you back here whenever I have the tail all the way done. Alright, so now that I've fastened off Cleo's tail, I'm ready to go ahead and attach it to her body. So just like we did with all the other pieces we've attached, we're going to be flattening this and then making sure that the tail that we cut is at the corner, right or left, because we're going to be sewing through both layers of fabric. So let's go ahead and grab Cleo, and the tail's going to go on the back of the body. I like to angle mine up to start with, and then once it's attached, you can pose it a little bit and move it where you want. So I'm going to go ahead and thread my tapestry needle with the tail from the tail. And then just like with all of the pieces we've sewn on, we're going to sew through both layers of fabric and through the fabric of the body itself to attach the tail on. Okay, so I have the tail sewn on, so to fasten off, once again, we're going to tie a surface knot. And make sure that you're on the body itself and not on the tail when you tie this knot. And then we'll weave the tail in by sewing it into the body. Unthread our tapestry needle and trim the tail. And that wraps up Cleo the cat's tutorial.